My presentation, you will jump, okay?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Paula is reconnecting.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Will you focus me or not? Oh.
No, I think
We
since we
are
four,
we are alive already. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canopy panel discussion. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Silvia Silva, and I'm co-hosting from Leiria, Portugal. I'm very pleased to be here tonight and co-hosting with Tiago. Currently, I'm a full-time MBA student from the University of Exeter Business School. Today, Canopy panel discussion is about academic learning versus self-learning, or the self-directed learner. We have a great topic for tonight for you. We are very pleased that Paula, Greg, Gwen, and Malik, Julia, and Joe, our guests, accept our invitation to be here tonight. I hope all of you enjoy and learn from each other. Our guest speakers are going to talk about their experience as self-learners and also as academic learners, and how it influenced their vocational journey, professional journey, as an entrepreneurs, employees, and freelancers. We invite all the audience to participate and place questions in the chat. Thank you. Now I'm going to pass to Tiago, my co-host.
Yes, so hello everyone. My name is Tiago. I'm helping here Silvia. I'm based in Aveiro, and I've just funded my first startup. So I'm taking this first ride as an entrepreneur. And I'm also associated now with Canopy because we are starting also the Canopy Aveiro community. Both Prava and I, we are kicking Aveiro Canopy. And today, so Silvia asked me to give her a hand. So we will kick off with Paula and Greg. And for the first part of the discussion, we will focus more on the academic learning. Both Paul and Greg are MBA candidates, and I would like to start basically just to ask you to give a very brief introduction of yourselves. And while you do so, please focus a little bit also on the story behind. So why are you taking the MBA? What led you to that? And would you keep with that decision? Also faced now with this whole COVID situation, what are your thoughts about it? So Paula, please, ladies first.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Sylvia and Tiago, for having me. Well, I am from Colombia. I'm environmental engineer with masters in civil engineering, and now, as you say, I'm doing my MBA. I took the decision of doing an MBA because I wanted to go further in my career. Since as an engineer, I think I had like a good technical background, but I wanted to know and learn more about businesses, how to, create different initiatives. And I'm very focused on sustainability. I'm very focus driven. So that's what I choose the Exeter MBA, to kind of mix the part of businesses with sustainability too. So that's who I am, and that's why I'm doing the MBA.
Okay, so it was your own decision, and you are doing it on your own, basically.
Yes, I'm doing it on my own. Okay. I took like 1 year to, start working and then focus on my career.
Perfect. Okay, Greg, and you?
Greg.
Hey, thank you, Sylvia. Thanks, Tiago. Good to see you, Paula, as well. So my background is in food and drink. I've worked across business development and strategy roles. I started out in London for 5 or 6 years, and then was lucky enough to move over to Scandinavia for 2.5 years, where I was based in Copenhagen. And most recently, I've been over in Munich, working for a venture capital firm who invest in startups, food and drink startups. That was up until March of last year, and that was quite a big life moment for me, I guess, returning to the UK. I was a bit unsure about where to go next, keen to explore other opportunities and avenues. So I took the decision to sign up the MBA which I started last September. And like Paola, I'm doing that completely independently. So I've been sort of unemployed since coming back to the UK. And would I have done the same again, Tiago? You've gone deep early. I think I've no regrets about doing it at the time I did do it. But if I'd come back to the UK and left it a year, I probably wouldn't do an MBA again now. No.
Okay. Because of the COVID, or has nothing to do with it?
Not specifically linked to COVID. I just think my life would have moved on and I would have found another path, if you like. The MBA worked for the time I came back last March. But since then, we're 12 months down the line, and I think another thing would have come up.
Mm. Mm.
Okay.
And just to clarify, the MBA you are doing, I don't know if it is the same MBA or if there's only one type. I'm not familiar with Exeter offer. It's a 2-year MBA?
It's a 1-year full-time MBA.
Full-time, okay.
So I can ask the audience to ask questions. We have in the bottom we have ask a question. So I invite all of you to make questions to Greg and Paula. But I will start with one. I will ask for Greg or Paula. Any one of you can start first. How valuable is an MBA to develop a career, a business, or become a self-employer entrepreneur? For example, you, Paula. How would you like to answer?
Thank you. I don't think it's a must, but I think it will give you a set of tools to develop further your career in some way. Because sometimes in your jobs you may not have the opportunity to explore different topics if you are really focused on one specific topic. For example, for me, as I was in engineering and also in project management, it was very focused on those aspects. But with the MBA, I had the opportunity to explore further different topics as, technology, innovation. And I think those are the characteristics of the MBA that I thought were very important to develop further in my career. A second aspect that is very important is having classmates from different parts of the world with different mindsets. I think that's very important to build your to challenge your own thinkings, your own things and ideas, and your bias, and that is really helpful in to build or to create a new business or to go a step forward in your career, like having discussions that help you to challenge your own mindset.
And regarding that initial question, would you still do it, knowing that what you know now?
I think yes, I will.
There was a bit of hesitation there.
it's because it's during COVID. I think someone recently asked me something similar, like, if you knew at that moment that it was a pandemic coming, did you do the MBA? I told her that probably not. But I think that the experience in the moment in my career that I did it, and in my personal life, it was very important for me because I think I went through a personal transformation during the program that was very important for not only in my career, but also in my personal life. And I think that it was the right moment to do it. So that's why I consider it as it was a good decision at the moment. Perhaps like the pandemic.
Yeah. How is the organization itself dealing with COVID? What was the changes now that you have undergone?
Okay, in the university, well, it was something that definitely took everyone. It was something that no one was ready to go through. But I was very surprised how all the lecturers, the MBA program actually changed and moved everything online. Probably it was just like in a week or something like that. They did the change. And of course, there are things that are not exactly the same. For example, The live discussion with your classmates from different parts of the world is something that is very challenging right now, especially because people is in other parts of the, around the world, different time zones.
Yeah.
And it's not the same discussion with the lecturers too. You don't have kind of like the same environment to learn. But I think the content is online, and you can just go through it and send emails and have, in one-on-one conversations with the lecturers if you make an appointment. So that's how like it's working now.
Okay, but you have the feeling that you are missing out on something.
Yes, definitely. I think I have to say, like, I really admire how the MBA managed it, but it's something that we are definitely missing a lot of value from the MBA.
Yeah.
In terms of sharing with other people. And also we had like some events to attend that we're planning to. We had like international electives, and those things were definitely not happening. So I think those are the things that we missed.
Yeah, and you, Greg, you also feel the same?
Yes. In terms of how the MBA has changed, definitely. I think not having the cohort, as Paula mentioned, I completely agree. I miss that human interaction a lot.
Yeah.
I think you need a lot of personal discipline to sit in a prison cell for a number of weeks and study off your own back. I think the MBA offline provides that structure, that daily routine, which I think is so important given the workload and given why I think many of us joined the MBA was for the network and to interact with others.
Yeah.
Tiago, sorry interrupting you. I have here a question on the chat from Julia to Greg, and then we jump to Joe as well. She asks if you say you would not do the MBA, she's asking why. Why?
Yeah, let's dig a bit more on that.
Scratch beneath the surface. This is like psychology.
Let's go to the fifth why.
But if it's personal, you don't need to answer it.
No, absolutely. It's a fair question, and I think it was definitely a personal decision and a bit of a life break when I came back from abroad. I'd sort of followed quite an intense career for, like I say, 10 years without really any pause. And I thought that was the time to take the pause. So I don't have any regrets about doing the MBA at all. It came at the perfect time. But if I'd left it a year, I think that would have already given me the pause that I needed in my life to move on to the next step. So it was purely a timing perspective as to why I wouldn't do the MBA.
But you think it won't allow you then to reach a higher wage or a higher position that without the MBA you couldn't do it?
So not at all, really. I didn't join the MBA in the hope of getting a CEO job or getting a huge salary. I was quite lucky to have job offers when I came back, and it was much less a career decision and much more of a personal life decision, the reason I joined the MBA.
Okay.
We have questions here from Joe. Joe is asking, could be one of you to answer, how about the balance between theory and practical skills in the academic journey? How you would answer this, Paula or Greg?
Well, I can take a little bit of that. When I think the MBA has something different from like a technical master's. In a technical master degree, you go very deep, personally in the one that I did previously, you go very deep in theory and like optimization, and everything have to be perfect models and everything. But in the MBA, I think at least the strategy that use the MBA that I attend is more like live activities. You go and you have a team and you have live discussions, you have to take decisions. So I think you get skills that you really use in your normal life, and that you will use and apply in a normal job or creating an entrepreneur or a new venture. So I think it depends a lot about the methodology of the program, and if you are a person that learns from doing, is very important that you pick those things in the program as a main characteristic of it.
Okay, there is another.
Let me
Sorry,
just,
Tiago.
just
Yes, please.
picking up on what you were saying, that you are missing out on something because now it's mainly online and you're missing on some events and connections. So from your point of view and from my gut, you feel that learning face to face or in presence will never be fully replaced by the digital experience of learning, right? Did I understood that correctly? Go ahead, Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think it's certainly the way learning in general, I think, is going inevitably is more and more online, because online learning does offer incredible advantages in terms of flexibility. So for those who aren't able to put their life on pause like we were and simply stop for 12 months, you can sort of fit the MBA in around your day-to-day life. So from a flexibility perspective, online is great. I also think from an accessibility perspective, it has huge advantages. So many more people can enroll and engage on an MBA, no matter where they're located, for example, or what their family commitments are. So I think there are big advantages. But for me personally, it's all about that face-to-face interaction, and that can't be replicated for me.
Okay. And talking about overall the academic experience itself, so even like a college degree and stuff like that, you would never change that. So you are really completely confident and really assured that it was the way to go to take the degree that you took, both of you, right? Greg, go ahead, answer, Greg. Yeah.
Well, I think you can never be 100% sure, Tiago, right? That's sort of an impossibility. I think.
But let me rephrase that. The other way, the other possibility would be just to do self-learning. If you had these two choices between the college degree, the academic learning, or self-learning, what would you choose nowadays?
I would still go for the college route, definitely.
Okay.
I think just to touch on a question Sylvie asked in terms of what's the value for a career of an MBA and what's the value for an entrepreneur, I think those are two very different reasons to do an MBA, because a career is something you undertake for a long period of time. That's very, very different from an entrepreneur's journey, which is much more fluid, much more changing. And I think a lot of people do an MBA to get a top CEO job. It's a fact of life that I think just over 40% of CEO Fortune 500 roles have MBAs on their resume. So that's just almost a tick box exercise for a lot of people. And I think from the entrepreneur's perspective, which is sort of a bit more of the reason I engaged with the MBA, I think it has developed a lot more beyond theory to become much more practical, as Paula mentioned. And if we take Exeter University, for example, they now have a dedicated startup hub. They run startup weekends. They engage very much with Set Squared, who are a Southwest-based organization that encourage networking for startups. So I think there are lots of good reasons to do an MBA today that maybe there weren't in the traditional MBA if you're hoping to start a business.
Right.
On top of that, Greg, can I ask you, is here Pedro asking, are they teaching the management skills for the future, or are they teaching old management principles? Are we studying ROI or backcasting? Are we studying how to do business plan or how to hack growth? You have the question.
You already hear the question.
Yeah. If you would like to answer this, and then we wrap this part.
Is that a question for me, Sylvie?
Yeah, or for Paula. It's both of you.
Paula, maybe I can start, and you can add on, which I'm sure you'll do really well. I think, like I said, I think the MBA's changed a hell of a lot in the last 5 or 10 years. I think the traditional MBA, in that sense, is for people to go on to become an investment banker or a consultant, for example. That's quite a well-trodden path. I think the MBA that we now study on is much more aware of the broader world of sustainability, for example, and soft skills and emotional intelligence play much more of a role than IQ, which they have done previously. So it's much less about heavily studying economic theory of the 1800s and much more about simply learning how to interact with people from different cultures and backgrounds in a teamwork.
Wow,
so
that's
every
cool.
single module on the extra MBA has teamwork, and it's assessed teamwork as well. So you're almost forced into these sometimes uncomfortable positions, but that's where you develop the really important soft skills that I think the school recognizes as so important today.
Yeah.
It's
Yes, just to finalize, I think, yes, I agree with Greg. They give you anyway like some kind of background about like those return, the basic things about economics, finance, everything.
Right.
But I think definitely agree with Greg that they are mainly focused on developing those soft skills that will give you, you know, creativity to tackle different kind of issues. Yeah.
Thank you, Paula. I think we can say goodbye to you, but in a small period of time. And we are going to invite Gwen and Malik to discuss the self-learning approach. And but we ask you to stay with us, okay, and join us later for the wrap up. Thank you.
Sure. Thank
See
you.
you in a minute.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Greg and Paula.
Hey,
Hi, Malik.
you can hear me.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Gwen is just connecting.
Yes. We are just waiting for Gwen. Is Malik here? He's still here, Tiago? Malik.
Yeah, he said here in the chat that I need to add him again. Yes.
I am now.
I will send the invitation again to Gwen.
I have to apologize the audience for not answer all the questions, but we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately. We have three parts, and now we are going to discuss the self-learning approach. Hi, Gwen. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and Malik as well.
Perfect.
So, Gwen, you are an MBA student, and Malik is a founder of the app Frame. And I would love you to introduce yourselves a little bit, and then we start with our questions. Malik, if you want first, or Gwen, it's up to you.
Sure. So, as you said before, my name is Malik. I'm from Portugal. And I'm currently a founder at AppFrame, so I'm building my own company, but I'm also wrapping a double degree in Berlin in both product management and interaction design. And I dropped out of school when I was still in high school. And so I had a long journey until I got where I am today. So I passed through a lot of different experiences when it comes to learning.
And hopefully I'm going to ask more questions about that part to share with us.
You are on which year? It's your second year?
I'm on the third year right now.
Third year.
Okay. And Gwen, please.
Hi, I'm also a full-time MBA student at the University of Exeter Business School. Additionally, I've continued being a consultant to help fund my studies, and I'm also a director of Devon Energy, which is a community consortium, community energy organization that's a startup since January, incorporated in January, representing the 23 community energy groups in Devon. So we are founded to develop large-scale renewable energy assets for community ownership, keeping the benefit in the local community. And I've also just started working through my MBA project, working with the satellite catapult to working with Earth observation data for natural capital. So I'm very focused on sustainability and environmental consultancy. And I also dropped out of school when, or didn't drop out, I left school to be home educated when I was in secondary school also. So I have that that experience too, which is very interesting.
Nice. Okay, so we have 2 dropouts here. Nice.
So the first question is, what are the pros and cons about the self-learning or the self-directed learning, and the tools and methodologies that you consider that are needed or not?
Can I also add here, since both of you are related to entrepreneurship, would you also ever pay for a degree, a college degree or an MBA to one of your employees? Or would you always redirect them more to self-learning and online learning and stuff like that?
So would you like to start, Gwen?
Yeah, you know, I've always got something to say. So
yes, please.
Tiago, that I would pay for education. I value education very highly. I think it has a place. But as a self-directed learner, most of my life, I also recognize the limitations of education or formalized education and the limits that it can put on people in terms of very formalized, formulaic styles of thinking and reasoning. And also the specificity that particularly in the UK and the UK education system, I don't know, elsewhere in the world, it may be similar, where you go into a very specific field of study very early on, and you lose this breadth of understanding of multiple disciplines. Actually, doing an MBA is something where you go back into doing multiple disciplines and you become broad again. So that's actually also very, very valuable, and it's something that hasn't been mentioned yet. I'm on a call. Sorry, that's my son coming in.
No problem.
And then what was the other question about the tools?
Yes.
The pros and cons, basically, right?
And if you use tools and methodologies for the self-directed learning process.
Yeah. Well, I can tackle that. So I would say that from my perspective, the pros, from my personal experience, the pros of being a self-directed learner are particularly around being able to develop multiple disciplines of interest and follow your own interest, so that you become motivated. You learn early on how to learn and how to follow your own interests and your own passions and things. And so you just find out and think about things that you're very interested in. And it's not challenging to learn like that. It's actually just very enjoyable. It becomes kind of like a hobby. It's something that you do. For me, I just do for fun. And I think there's a very strong link for entrepreneurship in that when you follow different interests and you continue to stay quite broad and you are a generalist, that works very, very well for entrepreneurs. And I think you'll find that very successful entrepreneurs are often people who've pursued very, very multiple disciplines and have very diverse interests. And I think there are even studies have been done to show that you know, Nobel Prize winners and so on often have very diverse skill sets and diverse interests. And I think there's a reason for that. You know, that people who are polymaths, it's the name for a polymath, is someone who, in Greek, that means someone who learned much. So you can make connections between things, and it precipitates creativity to be able to make connections between different disciplines simultaneously, rather than just having one sort of very narrow field of vision that you're just looking at one thing in isolation. And that's the main pro.
That's a good learning for me, polymath. I didn't know that word.
Me neither. Can you add something, Malik?
Yeah, of course. So I guess regarding the second question that you asked, Tiago, there's not a lot I can say because as a founder, we're currently in a very early stage where we're raising our first round. So there's not much I can say. What I can say is even at the moment, everyone who works with us already has access to Skillshare and a different book every single month. So I do believe that learning is important and you have to keep on learning. I'm not too sure whether I would invest on an entire degree or MBA for my employees at this stage where I am right now. Regarding the first question, there's a lot that can be said about the matter. I think learning on your own has a lot of disadvantages. One of them is that you're often alone by yourself. And so you have to be quite disciplined and you have to learn how to deal with that feeling of not belonging anywhere. Sometimes you just have to. On the other hand, you have to deal with trying to learn and trying to keep your motivation high as you go, because certainly what happens with me and with many self-learners, self-directed learners, is that they start one online course, they start one endeavor, but it's hardly the case that they finish. At least that's my experience, because you don't have as much pressure, you don't have usually don't have deadlines, also you don't have as much of an investment financially speaking, which I mean, it's not as compelling, right? It's not as real when you're doing something online, because of how much exposure we have to video, to Instagram, to whatever is out there. There's a lot of information out there. But personally, I think that's also the advantage. So the biggest weakness of self-directed learning is also the advantage, because you get to follow your curiosity. You get to explore what's more interesting for you. You get to decide, like, this is not doing anything else for me. Let's drop it. Whereas if you're in a degree and you already passed through half of the degree, there's this concept of sunk costs, but most people still stick with the degree when maybe it's not doing anything for them. And regarding the tools that you mentioned, personally, one thing I use that I love, it's, and I'm not associated with them in any way, but Evernote is amazing if you're a self-directed learner. The reason why it's a cool tool for me personally is that usually I just dump every information about something I'm learning there, articles, books, whatever. And when I'm searching for something, I can very easily find and see one article connected to another book, connected to some exercises I looked into 2 years ago, right? So if you're a self-directed learner, you're also generalist most of the times. I also identify myself with that. And so I can see how sometimes I was learning out of curiosity about neuroevolution in regards to artificial intelligence, and how I was able to pick on some things I already had from biology 2 years before. So Evernote in that regard, if you're someone who likes learning, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. So if you have more tips for people like that want to proceed on that area of doing like self-directed learning, that would be great for you also to share really precise tips. I'm someone that gets very easily overwhelmed when there is too much choice. And sometimes I completely block and I don't know how to start learning on something new. So if you know exactly which advices you could give to take really the first step when you want to start something new, that would be great.
I do.
Which areas to search for, yeah.
It's very clear in my head. It's very clear in my head because I'm someone who loves learning so much. Like every time I go to bed, before I go to bed, I watch like Khan Academy and history courses. I love learning. It's just, and so, I mean, you have to prioritize and you have to focus if you want to get anything done, right? So the 2 mental frameworks that I acquired was picking something when you're trying to decide what to learn and where to go, picking something that you believe is still going to be around in 50 years from now. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I decided to learn and prioritize, I was in between, should I deepen my knowledge regarding code, or should I focus on microeconomics? And the way my mental framework was, in 50 years from now, the mental models from microeconomics will still be around, and they're still going to be useful for me. So the fastest I get to acquire those mental models so I can make decisions, because that's what I'm hired for as a founder, the best. So that's one mental model I use. Focus on the things that don't change. And the other mental model would be what's the one thing from these subjects that I could be learning that might open more doors for me, might open more worlds for me.
Thank you so much, Malik. I have two questions, one for Gwen and another one probably for you, Malik. It's from Prava. Do the panelists think that a formal education destroys or builds confidence? One of you can answer it.
I think it depends what school you go to. So I went to a private school, and I went to a state-funded school, and I went in different countries also, and so I've had a pretty broad experience of the education system, and I think that it's extremely varied. I think if you go to a private school in the UK, I don't know about elsewhere, but if you go to a private school, you are paying to have your confidence built up, and you're pretty much told that you can do anything, and that there are no barriers, and that the world's your oyster. That is definitely not the case. My experience of going to a state-funded school in the UK, it depends. Maybe I didn't go to a good school in the UK at the state level, but that's my experience of it, and I think that that's borne out by what we see in terms of who gets to go to the top universities, who takes the top level jobs. In the UK, predominantly, people are still privately educated who are very, very successful. We just have to look at our politics today, and that's borne as well. But I think it has to be the case.
By the way, Jim was asking here to give an example of a polymath that you admire, since you were talking about about that.
I would come immediately with a very controversial figure. I would say that Bill Gates, for me, I am very impressed with the amount of reading that he does. I follow his blog. He has a blog where he shares what he's been reading. He reads prolifically, and I really approve of the books that he reads of, and he does reviews of, and it's always a great insight. And if you're looking for something interesting to read, I definitely recommend signpost you there. He takes a time off twice a year and just does a week of pure reading, and he carries around all the time with him a canvas bag full of books. He likes paper books. And I think it's evident in his programs that everything is based on data. Everything is based on really careful research.
Right.
And he really becomes an expert in everything that he takes on. And so I really admire him for that.
Yeah, good choice. Good choice. If you haven't seen, please watch the Netflix about Bill Gates. He's awesome.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, to a point where when I was 10, I sent him a letter. I wrote the letter and I sent him a letter. I don't know if it ever got there, but I truly admire Bill Gates, and I think the other answers I would have are also kind of cliche in a way. But definitely Leonardo da Vinci. It's someone I always looked up to, and then Feynman, Richard Feynman, physicist.
Oh yeah.
Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone from the audience would like to ask a question for Gwen and Malik.
Just have the inverse answer for the question about confidence, which I think is an important point that I'd like to make, which is that self-directed learning, on the other hand, can imbue you with a kind of confidence that going to a university or a structured education doesn't, because you learn how to learn and you equip yourself with the skills to be able to find out anything. And so then that gives you very, very grounded confidence. And there's a kind of confidence that's very important for entrepreneurs. So for myself as an entrepreneur, if I don't know how to do something, I just go and find someone who does. So if you take that attitude, you're very open. I mean, you can literally do anything. You just find an expert and ask them questions, find out what you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great comment. Yeah.
We have a last question for you, for both of you, about Stuart is asking what the panelists think of the recent UK government decision to award A-level grades based on mock exams. Any one of you would like? Gwen, you are from UK. Maybe you can answer this question.
I think it's probably a little bit on the unfair side. personally, I feel that the exam-based system is going backwards rather than forwards. I think that it's very unfair to rely on just exams, because in the UK it's predominantly, most of the knowledge comes from exam at the end of the year, and I feel like that's very unfair because there's only a certain type of learner who does well under those conditions. So I think that the whole system probably needs to sort of be rethought a bit, to be fair.
Perfect. Okay, anything to wrap up, Malik?
I don't have anything to say in regards to that. I don't know about the whole situation, but regarding the confidence, I might have something to say that might be in a way controversial, but it comes from my personal experience.
That's what I like.
To confidence. So again, the question you asked about whether having a degree might make people more or not more confident, I think it's highly contextual. It depends a lot on which degree are you taking, what are you learning. But I noticed that sometimes, getting a degree in certain areas related with business might create a certain false sense of security and confidence, in the sense that you feel like you've done it, right? You made it. You got the degree, and sometimes, from my observation from people of my age, I see how some people might feel like, oh, I got the degree, I have the knowledge, and that's not necessarily true, right? So that's what I have to say, that especially in certain areas like marketing, I experienced that most of the times what you learn in school is not directly applicable to the workplace. That's my personal experience.
Nice. Thank you so much, Gwen and Malik. So we are going to remove you from the screen temporarily. We are going to invite Joe and Julia to join us to do the wrap up, to conclude your observations, and to ask them to share their experience on their journeys. Thank you so much, Gwen and Malik. Stay with us, please. And
Yes.
Thank you. We are waiting for them.
That worked. Far out.
Perfect.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Sylvia. How's it cooking?
Hi. How is? Sorry.
Sorry?
How is, I didn't understand.
How's it cooking? That's an American expression.
I need to explain me that. What that means.
Oh, just how are things? Como está?
Okay. Como está? Tudo bem? Obrigada. Thank you, Joe. I hope you are well too. Thank you so much for joining us. We are waiting for Julia to join us as well.
Yes, I think I will do the same thing.
Yeah, she's there, I think.
I will remove her and invite her again.
Tell you what, the young people you've had on so far have been really inspirational. It's really good.
Oh, thank you.
I'm excited about what people can do now that they couldn't
There you
when I
are.
was young. It's cool.
Thank you, Joe.
Nice.
Hi, Julia. Nice
Hi,
to
guys.
see you.
Hi,
Thank you
Julia.
so much for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourselves briefly, please? Julia first.
Ladies
or-
first.
Ladies
Okay.
first.
Thank you. Okay. My name's Julia Arié. I live in New York at the moment, originally from Zimbabwe. And interestingly enough, I ended up where I am because my father did insist on sending me off to get a very formal education. So I went to high school, to a private public school in those days in England. And from there, I went to the United States and got my law degree. And so I practiced law for a few years and then went into investment banking. So I've really done quite a lot of educational hops around the world. So, and I have 3 children in university at the moment. So that's my rounded background. Over to you, Joe.
I'm Joe Reevy. I'm one of the I quit school people. I quit school at 15, by which time I'd been to 6 schools in the United States and England. Went to I got into Exeter University when I was 16. I've got a degree from there. I've got a degree from the Institute of Sound and Vibration Research at Southampton. I taught on the MBA at Exeter. I taught entrepreneurial skills when it was focused on finance. So I was very much on the left field side of things. And I subsequently became a chartered accountant and then got bored of that and quit that and founded some tech companies.
Very good. I would like to ask you, both of you, to kind of conclude the observations you heard from our guests, Gwen, Malik, Paula, and Craig, in terms of self-learning and academic learning. What was your approach in your life, and the lessons that you took from these different approaches of learning?
Okay.
Would you like Joe or Julie?
Okay, I'll take a first stab. My observations from what the previous speakers were talking about. One of the questions was about credentials, about confidence, having a formal education, and also a tangential piece of that, branded formal education. So by branded, I mean, if you go to Harvard or Oxford or one of those big name schools, that's instant credibility, instant confidence, whether you pay for it or you scholarship yourself into it, that is a worldwide recognized credential. So yes, some people do jump up onto that bandwagon, but that begs the question, okay, once you have such that credential, what do you do with it? And that becomes the bigger question. I come from a family where my father was a very big business person in his part of the world. He could not afford a formal education and ended up dropping out of law school and becoming the most successful business person in the country. The first thing he did was sent all of me and my 3 siblings off to school to get an education, just because, in his opinion, it was a fallback and something that in the worst case scenario you can rely on. So in that respect, I can agree. I do think it's necessary in the USA where I am now. I will tell you, it is absolutely critical to have some sort of credential, and brand name is very useful. It's not definitive. It does put your name into a certain pile, but in the way things have been going, it actually can take you out of a certain pile. So they do like the outliers, and the educational degrees coming from less branded schools. They are tired of the mentality of the general accepted branded schools, because it's an old, almost like a boys club. Sorry to be, that sounds not necessarily PC, but it's times are changing. True. And they do like to give credentials to other institutions. So I don't, while I think a branded education is great, kudos to those of you who have it. I have one myself. It's, I don't think it means anything if I don't personally go in and move the needle. So I think at the end of the day, on balance, I will say that it is very much an individual's stamina and ambition and what they do with all of the credentials that they accumulate. And there's no substitute for experience, because you can only learn so much from academics. And I think that you really do need to go out and really grab. And sometimes what you learn in the real world is more valuable and has absolutely nothing to do with what you did learn at school. But that may open the door to get you there. So it's a balancing act. But you do have to take the bull by the horns and take it on yourself. What do you say, Joe?
Just one quick question.
I'd agree with that.
Sorry, Julie. Just one quick question. Would you be like, let's say, disappointed if one of your kids decided not to go to go to university, to go to college?
I would say I would be disappointed to the extent that, again, I will take the position that it's not a bad thing to have in your toolbox. You never know when that's going to, you need it. And if you have the ability to get one, I think it's worth having. You're not going to gain nothing from it. Are you going to do everything with it? Probably not, but it's not invaluable or not valuable. It does have some value, but I don't think that's the only tool that should be in your toolbox. But it's a credential, and credentials are important. It does in a lot of places, and in the US, I'll tell you for nothing, if you don't have certain credentials, you're not making it onto that pile in the first place, and that's a silly reason to be off the table.
Right. Okay. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Yeah, we're clearly coming at this from slightly different angles, because, of course, what you're talking about is whether or not you want to make it in a particular milieu. And I'll give you one quick instance. our son read English. He's got 6 A levels. He's a brilliant boy. He read English. He came out of university with an investment portfolio because instead of debt, because he spotted that the online casinos had actually got their maths wrong. Now, his degree is utterly irrelevant for that. And nowadays there's so much potential. There's so many things you can do. It was alluded to before that all the resources that are there, which weren't there when I was young. I educated myself at grade school out of encyclopedias rather than go to school. And all that is at your fingertips now. And when I taught at Exeter, it was highly theoretical, what they were talking about. And I thought to myself, when I trained as a chartered accountant, I'd learned far better business tools than they were teaching. And yet, most businesses don't use them. Only big businesses use them, and then en passant. I think I think now is an absolutely unique period for people. You get the occasional person like Thomas Edison, who's a sort of self-taught genius. You have the ability now to absorb information from anywhere you want. And these people who are polymaths, and I've got every sympathy with that, you can pick things up from here and pick things up from there, and you can create new things out of almost nothing. And we're also in a position where finance is incredibly easy to get and incredibly cheap. And I'm actually, I wouldn't have bothered with going to university. I just wouldn't have bothered. I just gone straight into business, made a load of money, and retired when I was 30. Because
really good.
the irony of it is that unless you want to be in a big organization and work your way up to the top, and in which case you need those credentials, you need that sort of thing to establish the credibility, because that's their mindset. And big organizations don't hire the smartest people they can get. They hire the smartest people. They're not even interested in that. I've been refused by big organizations because I was too clever. They said, we do not want people who disrupt this organization in it. You will be successful, but you will not be successful in that case. It was Lever Brothers. You will not be successful in this organization because you will be too disruptive. And now we've got the position where young people now can go out and can acquire any knowledge that they want pretty much at the drop of a hat. Mm-hmm. I kind of wonder if universities, other than in pure science, where I think there's a lot to be done in engineering and those sort of disciplines, I kind of wonder if universities in 20 years have a future at all.
Right. Well, in response, I will agree with you 100%. It's, the tenacity is in the individual. And I do believe that your biggest education is outside of the classroom. The issue that I'm seeing in the United States, and one of the things I meant to mention is I did an entrepreneur program for university students in Portugal last year, where I had 22 students from 11 United States universities doing entrepreneurial efforts, and took some classes over in Lisbon last year. It was fantastic. And one of the reasons why I liked the program was that in the United States, it's an island. It's a very big island, but it's an island, and it's very insular in how people process things here. And I thought it was very valuable for the students to go and have a look and see what it takes to be an entrepreneur, because half of the students that went over there, when they were asked, what do you want to do when you graduate? They all, half of them said, oh, I'd like to be an entrepreneur. Half of them did not have the same answer when they left. And the reason was, you can't just want to be an entrepreneur. That's something you learn. It's a mother of necessity. It's a mother of, incentive on a very personal level. And you got to go out and get that yourself. That cannot be taught. I don't think it can be taught.
No,
but
I agree.
At the same time, what happens is that, we've got a group of the graduating classes of university nowadays are very spoiled, very mollycoddled, and we insulate them from a lot of the world's realities, which our parents went through and which we are going through, and we're now sitting at a stage where the world is changing, and they don't know what to do with it. So that's a scary thing. So Joe, I don't know how do we approach that in the situation where they really don't have the right tools, and I don't know how they go out and get the tools in the current environment now that we're socially cut off. And those are part of, I think, the essentials of getting out into the world and tapping into your own potential. I
could not agree more. I think the sort of the the tools in the sense of sort of technical things, I want to work out whether I'm going to make a positive return on this based on risk analysis. That's there. The tools that teach people how to understand what motivates other people and how to work with other people, those are very difficult. I mean, our market's always been lawyers, and the lawyers just cry when they talk to us because we built our business based on not having contracts, which is you as a lawyer, I think, will probably despair. and we just worked with people we liked. And when we stopped liking people, or if anything happened, we just worked with other people, and it worked brilliantly. And we spent nothing on lawyers for 20 years. But you couldn't do that as a big business, because sooner or later somebody's going to come along and kick your cart over. That's another American expression, by the way. And it is interesting with one of the things that worries me about COVID is that people are going to have lots of discussions with people like this, where the body language is really hard to read, and it's so important. Two-dimensional is completely different, and it worries me, because I think we'll have a lot of losses of communication. It will be harder to build teams, and I think the ease with which the internet makes it possible to build teams is, I think, one of the most brilliant. The first time I saw the internet, I thought this is going to be brilliant for networking. I didn't actually think let's create Facebook, but I think it's going to be very problematic now, with people not actually being able to get face to face and read each other's body language, and I'm quite worried about that now.
And also the other thing is, I found that one of the biggest learning tools coming out of my family, as I said, my dad did not have a formal education, and out of the four of us, my three brothers dropped out and ended up working for themselves or the family, and I was the only one that went on to get the credentials. And by the way, my dad did prefer having a lawyer in the family than having to pay for one.
Yeah.
But
if you're in a decent sized business, I would. Yeah.
But the thing that I think people learn the most from is, I wouldn't say copycatting, but when you see somebody that you're in an environment with, you learn from seeing what they do. And that piece, to me, I think, is one of the most valuable tools that we can ever learn. I learned how to cook. I learned how to, speak a language, not by going through a formal education, by the way, just by observing and watching and being dumped in the middle of having a conversation with somebody that doesn't speak English, and I had to learn to speak to them, or I had to copy somebody. Oh, I like the way that tastes. How do you make it? And the same thing with, I think, a lot of skills. When you see someone in action firsthand, that's the most valuable education you can have. And that's my biggest concern going forward.
I learned far more in 18 months managing in FMCG about business than I've learned before or since in formal business education or as a chartered accountant running a firm. Far more, because I was dealing with people every day who had things that bugged them.
Yeah.
And somebody did just mentioned about networking, and that's another challenge in this environment. I think that many people will meet their next business partner or their next idea from having been exposed to somebody at a dinner party or a seminar or something, just by the social environment before or after somebody formally speaks, because that's where people connect. And that's the challenge right now. And I think that as much as we try to bring people together virtually, it's not quite the same, because, we do make every effort to participate, but then there's, life gets in the way, other things get in the way, and it's not quite the same. So I value networking. I think it is a critical thing. And I would love to see going forward. Pardon?
Formal networking loses the randomness element. I'm reminded of a client of mine made millions because he was sitting in the bar at Düsseldorf airport, and he got talking to a guy who actually, he knew a guy who could solve that guy's problem, and he just sat in the middle of that thing, and he became a very rich man just on that conversation. And of course, now that we're sort of, targeting is of course better, but some random things happen that are extremely good.
I have here a question from Malik. asking is a very simple question. Where is it? Where can we? Oh, sorry, it's not this one. Why do we need entrepreneurs today? Very simple but very tricky question. Would you like to answer it, Joe?
Did you say me?
Well, the problem with
Julia.
Joe, okay.
Oh,
the word is
you.
the definition of entrepreneur. I mean, I think I always struggled with this, and the question is, what is an entrepreneur? But I think they're just people who do new things. And when you talk about the polymaths, there's somebody who says, "Oh, I can see this and it fits with that," and oh, how? What happens if we put those together? And we've sort of built this industry around this word, which I think is regrettable. And the reason we need entrepreneurs, as I define them, is simply because they create everything. Everything is entrepreneurial that's new and good. Yeah. Unfortunately, everything's also entrepreneurial that's new and bad. So we have Mark Zuckerberg, but
you need to start at something. So you need someone to take the first
step.
That
light bulb moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely agree, and I think that again, that's one of the reasons why this venue is unfortunately limiting, to the extent that it's hard to take a chance and it's hard to find the gaps. Some of them are very glaringly obvious, but those gaps are, a lot of times noticed when you're able to see more. And perspective is a huge piece of understanding what the environment is and finding the gaps in the marketplace that would actually stimulate a new entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur doesn't know he's an entrepreneur until the day the lightning bolt hits him and or her, and they come up with this great idea. And by the way, that's not the only step. That's step one. Step two is somebody thinking that's a good enough idea to act on it, and B, start to make the effort to execute on it. And then you need to convince other people to follow on and continue your idea. So it cannot be one-dimensional whatsoever. It's actually a collaborative effort, and how it gets taken to the next level to actually take off. And then retroactively, the person who started it is called the entrepreneur, but yet it can be a very complicated process.
Yeah.
So.
Very well. Well, thanks a lot. Should we wrap up, Sylvia?
Yes.
Unfortunately.
I would like also invite more people to the screen, but I'm not sure if we have time for it. But I invite the audience to make the last questions to Joe and Julia. Otherwise, we would like to listen your last thoughts on the subject of academic and self-learning approach before we leave.
Sorry, do you wish us to look at these questions, or do you? I'm confused.
Yes, I know. Yes, I asked the audience to ask questions. I know there is here a lot of Prab. Actually, she said you mentioned boys' club. This is a sort of exactly.
Yes, that's true. I have, a lot of people do decide to send their kids to a university because of that brand. And there is some value to that brand because they do have, that club. I mean, but I will tell you that I have a friend who has 2 kids at Harvard. The son is in the business school there. He was rotating 3 suits at the dry cleaners and making interviews. This was pre-COVID, flying backwards and forwards to New York on interviews. The reality was he made it to the first round, and he was one of 25 other Harvard kids. But guess what? That firm can't take more than 3 people from one university. So he's competing with 25 people for one spot, for 1 out of 3 spots. His chances of getting a job in some of these environments is very low. Whereas if you take another university, there's only 3 kids coming from, say, a Williams or a Colgate or a Tufts. He's got a one shot in 3, but they'll take one of his kids. So you have to kind of balance the value of these clubs. Yes, it's worldwide known, but again, the value it's competitive. So I as much as I do like the educational component because it is a good fallback, at the end of the day, the meat is the hustle is in. That would be my take. And yeah.
So
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Really interesting. Malik, I followed your suggestion. I invited Prava. Yeah, here she
Hi,
is.
everyone.
Hi.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to
Hi,
meet you
Prava.
all. Hi there. Not wearing my prettiest shirt at the moment, but I hope you'll excuse me as I got pulled up on the stage.
Tell us everything, Prava. What do you need to really get out?
No, I just really have enjoyed listening to this conversation and such a fantastic panel that you guys have brought together. Thank you, Sylvia and Tiago. And really with exactly the sort of diversity that I guess we'd like to reflect on this topic. So I guess Malik, since you asked for reflection, my own reflection that is yes, pushed some of these thoughts forward. I had a very similar sort of life setup as Julia in the sense that my father, self-made entrepreneur, who did not get the chance to complete education and so really wanted this for his children, wanted us to have what he did not have. And first 4 kids were girls. In his world, for girls to get an education was quite an unusual thing. He was from a village in India, made it across on ship to Singapore with his father when he was 14, worked a shop floor with his father to build, my grandmother. So, when you're brought up in this context of the meaning of education, and then here we are in today's world, everyone has access. It's a totally different world, right? Everyone has access to knowledge at their fingertips, and we're really starting to ask this question on ROI. I'm someone who has worked in entrepreneurial businesses and started my own business as well. Partly inspiration from the family, right? You kind of try and mimic what you see, I guess. It's a natural thing to do. But then definitely found that my legal education was holding me back, whether or not I liked it. I did a law degree from a university that had a big tradition in this. So, I think, I do have some moments where I wish that I did not have those constraints because you're so desperate to have that the taste of a true entrepreneurial spirit, unhindered by what you know.
What's interesting to me is we're having this conversation. You look at all of us, almost all of us. I don't know about you, Tiago, or particularly you, Sylvia, but look at all of us. My grandfather was a coal miner. And my father worked his way through New York University during the Depression. And we come from people from a background which isn't moneyed. And yet, but what interests me most is clearly everyone else on the screen is a lot more interested in earning money than I am, because I've never cared. But that's just a sort of lifestyle definition. But I think it's really interesting the way you have this, because I know lots and lots and lots of people are very wealthy. And most of them inherited their wealth and haven't done anything with it. Is that the same for you guys?
But they do take a degree.
Yeah, well, they've got all the degrees. I mean, I've got cousins who went to Harvard, MIT, and Princeton, mainly because their father gave libraries or lots of donations to the universities.
I think it's interesting, Joe, this money-making thing. The reason I mentioned it is because that's the way that businesses are sustainable, right? Like, I think that most people, and I'm sure this is true of all of you here on stage who've tried your hand at starting a business, that's not the original motivation, and in fact isn't when things get exciting, but when push comes to shove to keep going, you need the cash flow, and
Yes.
that's why I mentioned this. I think I never started a business thinking I would love to be a billionaire. And maybe if I had thought like that, I might be in a different place altogether, right?
The irony of it is that making money is seriously easy, and we laud people who make lots of money, and yet we don't we don't sort of worship people who have good lifestyles. That's the
Actually,
way I
I'd
look at
have to. I don't know, but I don't know if it's so easy. I'll tell you why. Because I think it comes easy to some, and I think that one of the issues that we have with the generation, I see it in my kids and their university friends and things. They don't understand the value of what it actually does mean to make a dollar. It's hard. It's hard to save, is what I would say. It's hard to save, and I think it's hard for the upcoming generation to really appreciate the value of what it takes, that what our grandparents or our parents did to do that, and they were very tenacious and they did a lot. And times are difficult on the one hand now to be able to do that kind of hockey stick jump, because I think in the world is becoming more efficient across the board. Salaries of everything's kind of starting to become a little bit more efficient. I think it's difficult. And one of the things that's interesting, I find, with the educational spectrum, which is something we've been talking about, is in the States, it used to be that, people were impressed with a high school education, and then it was a big deal to go to university. Now, university is the new high school. And I think
it hasn't been a big deal to go to university in the States in my lifetime.
Sorry?
And I'm an American, and in Britain it was hugely different. I mean, I remember getting results in the top 1% of the country when I was 16, and an Ivy League college didn't realize my grades were good. I mean, that's how it was 50 years ago. 40% of the United States population then went through tertiary education. It was 3.5% here. Now everybody goes through and everybody gets prizes, and it worries me because that discriminates very heavily against the most able.
And what happens is it also delays everybody's ability to get into the workforce and get actual practical experience. So, and when our parents were around, by 18, most people were, doing work. Some of them were getting college educations, but a lot of people were already in the workplace. Now the average age of entry into the workplace is 25. Which is a little frightening to me, because that's when you have, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the older I get, the less energy I have. I'm going like this. The thought of, crunching and doing and hustling all day is exhausting just to think about. But you know what? That's why you need to be young and doing that stuff when you have the energy. But that process is very much delayed. And especially nowadays, I feel terrible for the youth, because not only are they delayed, education might be deferred, and that's going to take more time. And their ability to learn, which what we were talking about before, on the practical side, and learning from others, which I think is the most valuable. Who knows? It's challenging. So it's a tough time.
I think the West is using technology to replace what were previously skills, and we're using education to mop up the residual unemployment. That's my view.
I think several governments would agree with you there. But on the subject of energy, I got to say, I did say I wasn't wearing a pretty shirt, but this is my dad's startup from he started a new business age 76. That was 4 years ago.
Well done.
Bravo.
So you gotta, it's never too late, Julia.
I love it.
Think, hustle. When you got the hustle, you have it.
Nice.
That's great.
I guess
think it's
certainly in my 60s when we started the last one. So
Right.
I think it's a great way to round up.
I love that. That was great.
All right. So I guess I will launch my last question, because I think in a way what we were discussing is advantages and disadvantages of one path against the other. But I think it's kind of ironic in a way, because most of the people that have gone through this panel, they experienced both of them in a way. So I think the question I have to wrap it up is, both of the paths, self-directed learning and going through the traditional path, have weaknesses. And the question is, how do we go about harnessing, taking those weaknesses and making them strengths in today's age? I think that's especially important given the whole COVID-19 situation, where we're all working from home.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say one thing. I think confidence I think fear is what holds people back a lot of the time. And I don't think anyone should ever look at their own credentials. And again, I use the term credentials loosely because credentials can be on a piece of paper from a university, or the fact that you learn how to do something. That's still, to me, a credential. So I would say that no matter the circumstances, I think everyone should really try to conquer the fear of asking, and to conquer the fear of learning, because you can. Everything is out there, and you need to just take that step and gain that information, whether it's given to you or you have to go out and get it. But the confidence should be yours to go out and get it. Don't take no for an answer. If your resources at the college are closed, then find it online. Or pick up the phone and call someone. So my suggestion to anybody is, any limitations that we're facing, and we're facing plenty of them, that shouldn't be a limitation, because there are ways to do stuff, and that's where you go through the gap. So that would be my answer to that.
I think
I'll make a contribution just to say that I think, I'm a firm believer that there's no one path, and I really think it's for everyone to find their own. My top tip is, if you are told that something is the path, challenge it and ask questions. And I like what you said, Julia, which is that there's no substitute for real life experience. I mean, and so get it early, find ways to get it as soon as you can.
Yep.
Alongside formal education. Why not? I mean, that's always an option.
I'd agree, Prabha. I'd almost say, let's teach kids maths, formal logic, and scientific method, and let them rip. If they want to learn, they will.
Yes, I love it. Especially scientific method. Yeah.
Well, most of the science you see these days is, well, I won't talk about it. You'll get me going.
Nice full stop right there. No exclamation point.
Perfect.
Drop mic.
Yes, I think we should drop the mic now.
Especially neuroscience. Sorry, we'll go there.
It's crazy how fresh it is, all the scientific approach, if you think about it. So thanks a lot to everyone. Sylvia, please do the host.
It's time to say goodbye, but also I want to thank you so much for joining us. I think was a very rich event, and everyone here and the audience can rewatch it later. And I hope to see all of you again in the next events. We will run new events in September, demo nights, panel discussion. So you can actually follow us on social media, LinkedIn, on the website is canopy.community, and you can see all the dates there. So also, if you would like to join us, to join the tribe, it's a community that is there to help each other. And we invite people to help us with a donation of 12 euros per year. And so you are able to have sessions, 3 sessions with Stuart, and also is the founder of Canopy. And also you can take good advantage of the community and support each other, creatives, innovators, and entrepreneurs. And even any kind of DNA of entrepreneurs are welcome, and creatives to join us. And yes, I hope all of you have a great evening. And thank you so much for joining us.
Joe, I'm going to join you soon.
Thanks.
Cheers.
You're welcome. Cheers.
No matter how you do, but learn.
Exactly. Never stop learning.
Never stop learning.
Good plan.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I just wish Portuguese was easier.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Thank you, Greg and Paula. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you.